Good morning, everyone. On behalf of the League of Women Voters of Boulder County, let me welcome you here this morning to meet your legislators. I'm Seal Ruffing, President of the League of Women Voters of Boulder County. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization that encourages informed and active participation in government, works to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influences public policy through education and advocacy. We never support or oppose candidates or political parties, but we do support or oppose various issues. For today's forum, we invited all state legislators whose districts include Boulder County, and I see that most of them were able to make it here today. We're honored to have you here to inform us about legislation that affects our lives and to answer questions. The format of today's forum will work like this. Our moderator is Jeanette Hillary, a League member and volunteer League lobbyist at the state legislature. We ask the audience to write down their questions for legislators with the pencils and cards provided by the ushers. Throughout the forum, ushers will collect the written questions and give them to the question sorters, who group them by topic and prepare them for the moderator. Jeanette will ask as many questions as time allows during the question-answer period. Some photos will be taken this morning, and the event is being recorded for rebroadcast on several local TV channels, YouTube, and websites. There is a public notice on the doors explaining that if you are here, your image or name might appear in these pictures or video. We ask that anyone who records this forum in any format, please respect the League's nonpartisanship. Follow the FCC rules to preserve the context or intent of what is being said and air the recording in its entirety. Thank you all for being here. Now I'll turn the meeting over to our moderator, Jeanette Hillary.
I am very excited to be here this morning along with our elected representatives from Boulder County. We're going to do a similar format as we've done before. I'm going to ask all the legislators to sort of do an overview of the session so far, any specific bills that they might like to address in their opening remarks, and then I'm going to go to specific topics that will be of interest. We've recently, the Senate has just approved the long bill, which is the budget for the state of Colorado. It does move to the House this week. So without further ado, I'd like to start with Representative Jonathan Singer. He's in House District 11. That covers most of Longmont, and you'll have 3 minutes, you all will, to do an opening remark about the session, any of your bills, whatever.
All right. Well, thank you very much for having us today. And special thanks to the League, and a special thanks especially to the person who's going to be giving me the red light, although maybe the rest of you should be thanking them. The League has been really instrumental in a lot of the work that I've done. As a former social worker with Boulder County and Denver County, working on behalf of abused and neglected kids and homeless families, it's good to know that the League is out there working on child welfare issues and focused on that. And even before that, in some of the voter engagement bills that I've worked on, including voter pre-registration, which has finally become law to allow 16 and 17-year-olds to pre-register to vote, so they're already in our democratic system even before they turn 18. This year is an interesting year. We have a Democratic House and a Republican Senate and a moderate governor, and so you're seeing a lot of different politically ambitious bills not quite make it all the way this year, but you're seeing a lot of robust and lengthy discussions. But the basic idea here is that we want to make sure that everybody gets a fair shot at the American dream, because when everyone plays by the rules, everyone should have a fair shot and be able to succeed in life without help from the government. So the kinds of bills that I've been working on have everything to do from economic development, making sure that manufacturers are put on, or recyclers are put on the same tier as recyclers when they get tax credits, so we can actually increase job growth, but make sure that recyclers who waste less actually get more bang for their buck. On the flip side, on education right now, I know that there's a lot of people, including myself, working on rolling back the pendulum a little bit from where we've put the focus on testing a little too much and teaching not enough. And then last but not least, in the area of child welfare, there's a lot of common sense things that just haven't been happening. And one of those, while Boulder County Human Services has been doing a good job, the rest of lots of other parts of the remainder of the state need to step up to the plate. We're not even doing background checks on foster parents before kids go to foster homes. Some of these counties, you see this happening at 50% rates, 25% rates. So we're stepping up to the plate for kids just like we are for businesses to make sure that they're kept safe and that they can have the same fair shot that we've been talking about for everybody else. So thanks for your time and your attention, and I look forward to hearing from the rest of the panel as well.
Thank you very much. I'm going to move down the panel, and the next one is Representative Mike Foote, and you cover the Lafayette area, Eastern Boulder County. It is Easter time, so anyway, without further ado.
Thank you, Jeanette. My name is Mike Foote. I'm in House District 12. It does include Lafayette. It includes Louisville and also Longmont, Eastern Boulder County, and I'm really happy to be here. Thank you very much for having this forum. Representative Singer spoke a little bit about the split legislature that we have this year, so the dynamic is obviously a lot different than it had been in 2013 and 2014. I think what you've seen come out of the State House, at least, is a very fine focus on the middle class and making sure that we have an economy that works for everyone. And the bills that you've seen come out of the House have been focused on that. I have a couple of bills in that area that really focus on the intersection between jobs and education that will help folks that want to be in the middle class or are in the middle class and want to make sure that their kids get an education and can get good middle class jobs upon graduation from their education. We actually call these, it's part of a package that we're calling our workforce development jobs. The Ready to Work package is what it's been called down at the Capitol. There's a lot of workforce development bills that have been introduced, and they're going through the system, and I'm on two of them. One is what we call the PTech program, that stands for Pathways in Technology. And what it focuses on is allowing students that are in this type of program to graduate high school with both a high school diploma and an associate's degree in a technical field, like a STEM field, science, tech, engineering, and math fields. And it really focuses on this skills gap that we see here in Colorado, and I'm sure in other states as well, where there are a number of folks that don't have jobs still, unfortunately, even though our economy is recovering. It's not been an even recovery. And there's a number of job openings out there, particularly in the STEM fields, but they don't have anybody that can fill those job openings. And so those businesses can't continue to grow as much as they could if they had those skilled workers coming in. And so one of the things that we'll be doing is focusing on being able to fill those fields through the PTech program, and hopefully we'll be able to talk about that a little bit later. Education is always something that's on the top of the minds of folks here in Boulder County, and particular education funding. I have a bill, and Senator Jones is one of the Senate sponsors on this bill that will, hopefully if it passes, will be able to raise some more money for education. And we don't fund education nearly enough, and I think everybody realizes that. We need to come up with some creative ways of doing it, and this bill, which again I hope to be able to talk about a little bit later, will raise money from corporations that have overseas tax havens. And they have put their money overseas, and they're not getting taxed on that money. They should be paying the money, but they're not. And if we tax that, and if we close that loophole, then we'll be able to put up to $150 million into education here in Colorado, and I hope to be able to pass that. So thank you again very much for having us, and look forward to further discussion.
Thank you very much, Representative Foote. The next speaker will be Representative Dickie Lee Hullinghorst. She's from District 10, and she is also the Speaker of the House this year in the legislature, and congratulations on that. So your 3 minutes, an overview of what you see is going on, since you have to herd all these cats in the House.
Thank you very much, Jeanette, and thanks to the League of Women Voters for doing this very great forum. It it provides a great service to our constituents and to the people of Boulder County. And I also want to thank my colleagues. I'm convinced, and I'm sure that many people would agree with me, that we have the very best delegation from Boulder County in the House of Representatives. They do a terrific job, every single person, and I'm very proud of the work that they do. As my two colleagues before me have said, our major priority this year as a caucus, Democratic caucus in the House, and I believe that's shared with other members of the General Assembly, are helping hard-working people in Colorado take advantage of the upswing in the economy. And that's not happening for everybody. And that deals primarily with the middle class, but when we help the middle class, we also help those trying to get into the middle class. And we also help the wealthy, actually, very much. The middle class are the folks that create the jobs, that buy the goods and services. And if they aren't doing well, the economy doesn't do well. There are several things we're concentrating on in that regard. Education, and there'll be a lot of talk about that. We have a lot of bills. We need to address our standards and testing issue, and I think we have a pathway to do that in a very moderate and way that makes everybody a little bit unhappy, but makes practically everybody a little happy about what we're doing there. We now have to deal with the School Finance Act, that the budget is almost finished, and we're working very hard on that. And workforce development is a very big part of what we are planning to do to help out the middle class actually take advantage of the jobs that are being created in this new economy, providing the education and the pathway from school to jobs. We also are doing a number of things to help small business. There are several bills my colleagues are carrying that you may hear about. And quite frankly, we don't have a great economy in this state unless we have a great environment. It is our major economic tool, in my opinion. So we're doing several things to help with climate change and help with incentivizing renewable energy, and all of those things are very, very important. As Speaker, what I try to do is bring people together from both sides of the aisle, from both chambers, to reach the kind of agreements and compromises that will make for good legislation, and that's my biggest job. I don't carry very much legislation. I just help to make sure we look at the big picture and make it happen.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm going to move to the other chamber now, and I'm going to have Senator Raleigh Heath, who is in Senate District 18, give his introduction, and welcome. Yeah.
Thanks, Jeanette. Thank all of you for coming. It's always a highlight to be able to do this every year, and we look forward to it. And it comes at an opportune time of the session. We've got, when we return, Monday, 30 days left. So we have a lot to do. And as you mentioned, we just did finish the budget. I know we're going to talk a little bit about that. But going from the majority leader to the assistant minority leader is not what I envisioned for my last 2 years in the legislature. I think you know we're term limited, and it has incredible impact, not us obviously for me selfishly, but for all of us. It means that the president of the Senate is now a Republican, and majority leader, who my old job is a Republican, and probably as important, all of the chairs of all the committees are Republicans. So the ability of Democrats, including myself, to have as great an influence as we had the last 6 years in my case is obviously greatly diminished. But we're all working at it. It is, I don't want to make you think this is a Washington thing. We do work at this, and I do think we have some of the areas that we discussed. I think we have some opportunities to come together, particularly on the workforce issue, which I think you know has been one of the things I've concentrated on since the time I've been there. But what so much of the conversation and so many of the subjects that we're talking about all goes back to one fundamental issue, and my colleagues have heard me talk about it, and that's really what is the role of government. We are having monumental conversations, not only in our state house, but in the country, about what the role of government is, and we have very, very, very different views. And that budget in some way reflects that. I, for the second time, now in 7 years, was a no vote on the budget because I didn't think, frankly, it took into account exactly what my colleagues have talked about, the things that directly impact the ability of the middle class and the lesser among us to be able to share in the great economy that we have. The irony is we have one of the greatest economies in the whole country, and that has been all too often only shared at the top of the ladder and not at the middle and the lower class. And it was because of that I voted against this. Also at a time when we're going to be refunding money because of Tabor. And that's got to be part of this conversation as well, where we're funding education both at K-12 and at the higher education level in the lower quartile, and we could debate whether we're actually at the bottom in higher ed. We're going to be refunding money. You all are going to get somewhere around $11 or something this year. And this is a conversation we have got to have as a state, and I hope the league would participate in this with us. But I hope we'll get at that as we go. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And we definitely will be addressing more of the budget issues, the tax credit, et cetera, in a few minutes. I would like to move to Senator Matt Jones. He's in Senate District 17. And for your opening remarks.
Thanks, Jeanette. Again, my name is Matt Jones. I'm happily representing Longmont, Louisville, Lafayette, and the Boulder County side of Erie. And I say that because I think it's a great district. It's a lot of wonderful people, and it's a district that's real concerned about their future. And it's a very solid middle class there, and what we need to do is build that up and build that out even more. So that's been my focus this year, and I think Democrats in general's focus. For instance, I did a bill that would allow people to deduct their student loans off of their taxes, their state taxes, income taxes, which is timely right now. Unfortunately, it lost on a party line vote, and we did a lot of opportunity bills like that for college to help people afford it, which because it's so unaffordable these days for regular people. And unfortunately, they all died on party line votes. And that's kind of the world we're experiencing right now, unfortunately, in the state legislature. The other thing is I worked a lot on clean energy jobs, worried about climate, renewable energy, energy efficiency. I sponsored a grid modernization bill, which allows you to do a lot more with the electricity you have and use it a lot more wisely and save money while you do that. And also another bill called performance regulation, which is code for basically rewarding companies like Excel for doing the right thing, for providing clean energy at a less expensive price and helping everybody out in our future and polluting less in the end. That's the goal of all of that. Along the way, both of those things will create jobs for people. It's a lot like using your phone now, comparing it to an old phone, all the things you can do with the phone these days and making it much more efficient and having a lot of entrepreneurial ability, like the apps on your phone for electricity. So that's the other thing I've been working on. Also transportation transparency with the US 36 deal, where we were all surprised by that, and it's now too late, unfortunately. But we need to change that way they do business, and I've been working hard on that. But the bottom line is that I think we all know that the economy isn't benefiting everybody. It's great that it's back, but there are a lot of people being left behind. That's true in eastern Boulder County as well. So we're trying to work on ways to help people better their lives, better their children's lives, and have the opportunities that we all want through kind of an American dream frame. So I'm happy to be doing that, and thanks for this opportunity to talk to our constituents through the TV.
Thank you. And our last panelist for the day is Representative Diane Primavera from House District 33. That's in Broomfield in southern Boulder County. And you're also, I believe, chair of the Health Committee. And we will get to you later on other health care bills this year. But your 3-minute opening statement on your tenor of the session, et cetera.
Okay, well, thank you very much, and I just wanted to say that part of the tenor of our chamber is set by our speaker, Hullinghorst, who I think has done a really good job, and we're really lucky to have her. I do represent House District 33. I'm in my last term, and the things that are most important to me always, as you mentioned, are health and the environment. I think what's interesting this year is that, for me, it doesn't feel like anything on either end of the spectrum is going to get through. Some of the bills that we see come out of the Senate that really don't mirror our values, we're able to stop in the House. Some of the things that we send out of the House that really don't mirror the values of the Republican majority in the Senate get stopped in the Senate. So I think what we're seeing a lot of is things that are down the middle of the road, things that we can find common ground on, which, isn't always a bad thing. It just means that for some of us with a more democratic liberal agenda, it's really hard to move mountains like we have in the past. So we're seeing a lot of bills that are sponsored in a bipartisan manner. A lot of the bills that we see come in front of my committee especially have both two prime sponsors, one's a Democrat and one's a Republican. And then if they aren't prime sponsored by both parties in the House, usually if they have a Democratic sponsor in the House, they have a Republican Senate sponsor in the Senate. So I think we're seeing a lot of things more down the middle. I do chair Public Health and Human Services, Health Insurance and Environment. I sit on that. I sit on Legislative Audit Committee, so we make sure that government money is being spent wisely, people's taxes. I sit on State Veterans and Military Affairs Committee, and I'm on the Legislative Implementation Oversight Committee for the Health Exchange, so that's been under the spotlight as well. I've already had a couple of bills signed. One was to ban the sale and the production of plastic microbeads in personal care products. Yes. They're not able to be filtered out of our system by the water treatment facilities, and fish mistake these for eggs. They eat them, and it either messes up their intestinal tract or actually helps them starve to death. And if they do live and bigger beings eat them, then they wind up in our food chain. So that's one that's already been signed into law, and I'm really proud to do that.
Yeah, I know. That was an exciting bill, from my perspective, since I followed natural resources.
Yes.
But, yes. Anyway, I want to go back to specific subjects. Every year, we face the long bill, which is the budget in Colorado. And we in Colorado have to have a balanced budget. That is in our Constitution. So the bill was introduced, I believe, a week late this year, and it was introduced this year in the Senate. So I would like to split about 5 minutes between Senator Heath and Senator Jones, since the Senate just finished addressing this, to go over what were some of the issues. There were a lot of amendments that were introduced on both sides of the aisle. What were some of those, what did get passed and put in for amendments, et cetera. And so I'll start with Senator Heath and sort of give you your 2.5 minutes and then go to Senator Jones, okay?
Well, it's easy to answer the latter part of your question, and thanks. Basically, none of the amendments got put in, and
Okay.
that was really part of the problem that we did. The year before, when we were in the majority, we being the Democrats were in the majority, we actually had a number to include $50 million worth of amendments that got moved around, and we thought maybe that would be reciprocated this year, and it didn't turn out to be the case, and ended up in my no vote. But I've got to tell you, on balance, where I thought we would be with the 3-3 Joint Budget Committee, I think that overall, I thought the budget actually was fairly good with what we have. The biggest concern I have is back to the Tabor issue again. Part of this is we had to set money aside for the regular budget of approximately $70 million, and then we're going to refund marijuana tax money, which a couple of my colleagues here I know would like to talk about. I looked down at Jonathan to start with, Representative Singer. We're going to be refunding that because of a more technical reason, but we're going to be refunding basically $100 million. And when you look at what we are not able to fund in terms of some of the things dealing with middle-class issues and tax increment financing, which we're going to get into, and all the other issues that we have, and even looking at opportunities to move beyond this and fund things that we know, like full-day kindergarten and some of those other issues, to be doing these refunds just absolutely drives me crazy. And I was hoping we could get at something, that we could come together and get a referred measure out, and we might on the marijuana, but we're definitely not on the other. We are going to get money into education, but not nearly enough, and that was part of what we tried to do with some of these amendments. And we're going to talk about that and some of the ramifications of that. But overall, I would hope after this bill gets out of the House and comes back to the conference committee that I will be able to vote for it, and that we will have been able to integrate some of the things that I felt fairly strongly about that we weren't able to do in the Senate, basically because every vote was 19-16, 16-19 no, in effect is what it was. I'll stop there.
Okay. And Senator Jones, how did you feel your week went with the budget?
It went really long, for sure. We finished at 10:45 Wednesday night on second reading, to give you a flavor of that. But I think Senator Heath is correct. When the Democrats were in control of the chamber a year ago, $50 million worth of Democrat and Republican amendments got put on the budget. This year, I think it was about 500,000. And so that's really disappointing. What's really interesting about this refund for the marijuana tax money, we've gone to the voters, or people have gone to the voters twice now, and the voters said, yes, we want you to do this and tax marijuana sales and put part of that money into schools. Well, because of Tabor and all of the little pieces it has in it that people didn't know about when they voted for it, in the blue book you receive in the mail, the estimate for the budget, the whole budget was off a little bit because oil and gas severance tax monies came in so high. What that means is we have to go to the voters a third time to say, did you really mean what you said the first two times? And I want people to think about it. That's the kind of weirdness that comes out of Tabor. And that's the step one. Then there's step two. We're refunding money in the whole general fund as well. And we're doing that in a time when we're not restoring the $1 billion we cut from schools. We've restored $100 million of that, and I think it'll be $125 million if this budget passes. And class sizes are bigger in St. Vrain schools. There's less money to help kids out, and there's no way to climb out of the hole. So that's the kind of thing people need to have in mind. It's not just voting on taxes. We're not talking about voting on taxes. We're talking about all these formulas that were put into the state that puts it on autopilot and has results that I think people don't want. The marijuana money is a good example of that. People told us twice to go ahead, have recreational marijuana and tax it, put part of it in the schools, put part of it in regulating the marijuana sales, and we have to go back again and ask because of some small piece of Tabor, and there's a lot of those things. So we have a real big conversation with the people in the state of Colorado about how to best run the government for them and not have these, I think, silly things where we have to vote 3 times. You know, we heard you, but the Tabor did not.
Yeah. Okay. Now, I know that the long bill, the budget, will be going over to the House. You will tackle it on Monday morning. Representative Hollinghorst, what do you feel is going to be the tenor in the House, and what are you anticipating? Are you going to get the same number of amendments that might have hit the Senate floor, whatever? And you'll have like 4 minutes to sort of do an overview there.
So we're getting a budget in the House, as has been described, that is a pretty big compromise, and it had to be. We have a 6-member joint budget committee that presents us with the budget, and when we have split chambers, we end up having 3 Democrats and 3 Republicans on that committee. So in order for them to pass a budget to us, you have to have a bipartisan agreement. And that is what this budget represents. It is not perfect by a long way, and I agree with my colleagues that the dealing with the minority amendments with the Senate was pretty perfunctory and didn't accomplish a lot in terms of improving that compromise. We will see amendments from the minority in the House. And that really is, to some extent, their job to point out the issues in the budget that they don't believe we've compromised enough. We will have some of our own amendments, hopefully, that will add some of and improve some of the issues that our Senate colleagues have pointed out. And they will pass. And then we'll go to a conference committee, probably week after next, or maybe the end of this coming week. And hopefully, though, all of those issues will be resolved to everybody's, at least keeping everybody somewhat happy, and that a very large number of people will be able to vote for that balanced budget in its final form. We have a lot of work to do in the House over the next week to get that job done. That's what we'll be primarily working on. And we hope that we can add money in some important areas like education, and in areas like child welfare and other environmental issues that might help this budget considerably.
Okay. Thank you. I'm going to go on to one of the other topics that has been brought up. I want to start with Representative Singer to talk about some of the child welfare bills. There have been a number of them in the session. Most have passed. Not all. And so where do you see some of these bills going? What are their nature right now? And I'll give you like 4 minutes to cover some of those topics.
Perfect. Well, thank you again. I think when I first ran for office, people ask me, do you think you're going to be able? You're up to the task. It's it's pretty rough and tumble, and I responded, well, I did work in child protection for 3.5 years before that. They go, oh, okay, you'll be fine. So it's the same level of emotion, and the stakes are just as high. It's just on a bigger scale. Probably the biggest issue, and this is the biggest elephant in the room, and I know that, I started out talking about how some of our counties aren't stepping up to the plate, aren't doing their job. I think the question we need to ask is why, and the biggest reason is that we have underfunded our child welfare system, just like we've done our schools, just like we've done our other infrastructure, like our roads and our bridges. And when those things aren't funded properly, things are going to slip through the cracks. And so we had a bipartisan workload study done through our state auditor's office last year. The numbers came back this year that we are between 600 and 800 workers short statewide. When you have a 600 to 800 worker deficit, or 600 to 800 workers 600 to 800 cracks in your foundation of a child welfare system, how can you expect it to be successful? How can you expect kids to be protected the way that we should all hope it is? And so, I want to start off by saying that because there are a lot of things we need to fix, but when that foundational core isn't there, we're never going to get all the way there. So fortunately, in the budget, we saw that the Joint Budget Committee added about another 100 workers. So we've put down a down payment on the down payment, so to speak. So 100 instead of 600 or 800. And I think that we need to continue making sure that we're doing the right thing for our kids. That being said, there are some bills out there. One of them we talked about was making sure background checks happen. You'll see a second one that will also be looking at the background check issue for child placement agencies. These are the agencies that license foster homes when counties don't do it. Sometimes they contract out. Those agencies don't have the same access to the child protection database that shows whether or not someone is a child abuser and trying to apply to be a foster parent. The third one, and this one I know is generating a lot of controversy, is the independence of our Child Protection Ombudsman's office. If we could change anything about the office, it would first of all be for me the name. I can barely pronounce it. But more importantly, and on a serious note, right now, the Child Protection Ombudsman's office is governed with state dollars, and it sits within the Colorado Department of Human Services. The Ombudsman's office is supposed to be a neutral third party that you can call up as a citizen, as a foster kid, as a child protection worker and say, you know what, I think this kid slipped through the cracks. I think they're at home with someone who's abusing them. I think that maybe the department didn't step up and do the right kind of investigation. They're supposed to provide those suggestions, and I'd like to move that from out of under the Department of Human Services and into a more neutral space where they are free to operate, and more importantly, there isn't a perception of a conflict of interest. So there's a lot that we need to do. But I've only got 30 seconds to explain the rest of it. So what I will say is this is something, if you take one thing away from this, a neutral division of our department said we are between 600 and 800 workers short in protecting our most vulnerable kids. If we don't start addressing this in the next couple of years, it doesn't matter what I'm trying to do today. And so I look forward to hopefully seeing a better bolstering of our foundation for our kids.
Okay. And Senator Heath would like to have some comments on that.
No, thanks, Janet. I just want to add that one of the amendments that did not pass in the Senate was to increase that number. Actually, I think we're adding just 47 more. It got short shrift. But I mean, that's one of the specific amendments that you asked me about, but plays directly on this. We all thought we should have more additional members, welfare workers.
My Representative Foote had talked about workforce development, and I'd like to spend a little bit of time between the House and the Senate bills, because there's interest on both houses on this panel in addressing some of those. And so if you could talk about some of the workforce developments you've started looking at, and if you have, in 4 minutes, and then we can go to the Senate and get what both Senator Jones and Senator Heath have been looking at also. So, Representative Foote.
Right, thank you. And there are a number of workforce development bills. I think it's between 8 and 10. Some started in the Senate, some started in the House. And I've looked at some more closer than others. And it's really the overall theme, of course, is the focus on jobs. And that's something that all of you tell us to focus on year after year, and that's what we should be focusing on. And that's why we wanted to put together this workforce development package and introduced it. It's a very bipartisan bill package. I think there might be one, but probably all have bipartisan sponsorship in the House and the Senate. And we think that most have a very good chance of passing, which is a good thing. And the ones that I'm most familiar with are the ones that I've looked over, but specifically, of course, I have 2 of them in the workforce development package. The one I referenced earlier about P-TECH, and I just think can be a great program. It would create a pilot program so some other school districts, it would be about 4 or 5 school districts that would be able to take advantage of that at the beginning to see how it works. It's something that has been done in other states, and it's been shown to be very successful. St. Vrain Valley School District actually has something that is not really P-TECH per se, but it looks like what P-TECH could look like. And a number of us have been over there to observe and see how it works, and it's really interesting and I think very valuable for those kids that are going through that program to be able to get out of the program and have specific skills working with local employers and being able to just leave with an associate's degree and get started in a high-paying, good middle-class job. And that's something that we desperately need. Another bill that I'm running deals with internships, which is the same kind of concept, actually. Again, there's a number of employers that could use some help in this area, and a number of kids that want to get internships, which is, of course, a stepping stone into a good job upon graduation. And we're trying to fund some of those internships in the innovative industries, which is pretty much the same as STEM, but it's a little expanded from STEM industries. So these are really a focus of what I'm doing and what many, many other members are doing. I think there's several other folks on this panel that are sponsoring workforce development bills, and it should be, because that's what folks like yourselves are telling us to work on. And I'm really pleased that we're doing it. I'm pleased also that it has bipartisan support, and of course I'll be even more pleased to see them pass.
Yes, the little things in life. Senator Heath, could you address it? Because I know this has been a big issue for you, as it has with Senator Jones. So in like 2.5 minutes, address some of the bills and your issues there.
Thank you, Jeanette. Yeah, it is. It's been something that I've spent most of my time on, or I shouldn't say most, but a lot of my time on. We lived in Germany, the apprenticeship and internship programs, particularly in Germany, but around the world, really, they don't exist in this country. And and we're making a real run at it. One of the things I think we really ought to be proud of, we were asked the other day, what are some of the things we're going to look back on and be most proud of, and one of them certainly is the ASCENT, the Concurrent Jurisdiction Program. President Obama is talking a lot about making a 2-year associate's degree available at no charge to virtually every person who wants to do that in the country. Well, we've been doing that for 5 years. Those are the bills that I helped sponsor back then, and it's basically staying in, we were talking about that, basically staying in high school for 5 years and doing the 4th and 5th year in a community college and walking away with an associate's degree. We desperately need plumbers, electricians, tool and die makers, welders, all of these basic skills that any society needs. We can educate the 4-year college degree folks, but that's only 25% of us. And the Colorado paradox is we even bring most of those into this state. But we're not educating that technical level, and these bills are basically being designed, so many of them. I'm on half of them. I think there are actually 12. I think I'm on 6. And I don't want to get into all of them, but they all have this as the common theme. And what we're trying to do is to incent and encourage employers to provide these kinds of programs. We've got one bill that if an employee comes out with a high student loan, any employee, whether it's an associate or whether it's a 4-year degreed engineer, and that employer is willing to hire them and willing to pay half of the student loan to actually directly to the lender, we're trying to do something like that. So we're trying to encourage on the employer end of it, putting in these apprenticeships and programs, on the other end of it, trying to encourage the students to stay in school, look at these from the opportunities that it obviously presents for good paying jobs, and bring all of those together. So that's been our emphasis.
Okay, Senator Jones, I know you've really been working on this also.
Well, actually, I haven't been working on this package per se, but I have, since I was elected, been working on jobs bills, and workforce development is one way to say it. I think of it as jobs. This is for opportunity for people to get ahead, to achieve, to get satisfaction out of their work, and also so they can save for their kids' college education and even retirement, which is even seeming more out of reach, and having a good health care package. So that the jobs piece of this, I think, is critical, because that is what lifts the middle class up. And I've done it more in the frame of the clean energy side of things, renewable energy, energy efficiency. And modernizing our electric system, I think, is just critical to that. Let me give you an example. There's a small company in Fort Collins that looks at solar panels on roofs around and makes them look more like a power plant. It consolidates all that information, because companies like Excel don't really like all these various solar panels out there. They're hard to manage. They like turning on a switch to a coal plant or a gas plant, because that's easy to do. So they've been resistant to more solar panels on roofs, in part because they're harder to manage. Well, this company is going to create jobs for people to figure out a way to make that look like a plant you would flip the switch on for a gas plant or a coal plant. And that's the kind of thing we need to do. And a lot of people, when I talk about modernizing the electric system, they kind of give me a blank look. But it's just like your phone. It's that innovation in the apps and those kinds of things, and the job production and the job creation from that, and the opportunity and the efficiency we all get from that. And it's a lot better way to produce energy is to not have to need it in the first place, and it pollutes a lot less. And with our climate change issues going on, we need to push this very hard. And those are just the kinds of jobs that in Eastern Boulder County will really benefit from, and so that's what I push on.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to move over into the health area, and there have been many, many bills this year, and I was wondering if Representative Primavera could talk about the types of bills you've been addressing, also the Affordable Care Act, which has had some press over the months. And what are some of those issues that you've seen in the legislature and in your committee in healthcare? So 5 minutes to talk about any of that, and then if anybody else has any other comments.
Okay, well, thank you. Well, this sort of is the jobs is sort of a segue into what we've been doing in the health arena. As you know, with the Patient Protection, I always have to add that, and Affordable Care Act, because that's the real title. One of the main things with that was to expand Medicaid coverage, which we've done. Our health exchange, Connect for Health Colorado, is actually one of the most successful exchanges in the nation. I think we're like 4th in the nation for the kind of work we've done, even though we've been functioning for several months now without an executive director. But it doesn't do a whole lot of good to expand coverage for people if they can't find providers. And the provider rates that we have in Colorado are pretty low, and so that discourages providers from wanting to take Medicaid patients. So some of the things we've done that relate to jobs in our health committee is that we've been trying to pass legislation that helps different medical professionals work at the top of their range. So, for example, give more responsibilities to advanced practice nurses that traditionally maybe medical doctors have been able to do. So we've seen some bills where we, in order to become an advanced practice nurse and be fully functioning, you don't have to have the number of hours supervised by a doctor in order to write prescriptions, for example. We've seen some legislation where people who precept, and my daughter's a nurse preceptor, in rural areas, and so if a doctor takes on a physician assistant or something like that, they can actually earn tax credits for taking on preceptors and working more in the rural areas. We've done some things like for dental hygienists, they can do some additional procedures like on children to drill out, well, they don't actually drill, but they use hand tools to scoop out cavities and put a protective sealant over that so that the child can, at least have that taken care of until they can see a regular dentist and have a filling put in, and sometimes those can last 2 years. So we've tried to get people to work at the top of their professional level. In terms of the jobs, I spent, and I hope I can just go back to that for a minute, spent most of my life working with people that were really difficult to employ. And we heard in one of our health committees recently, as we were talking about the Commission for the Deaf, that the unemployment rate for people who are deaf-blind is 80%. The unemployment rate for people with disabilities in general is about 30%. And there's a whole lot of people that are very difficult to employ, people coming out of the correctional systems, people who are foster care kids, people with disabilities, and now even senior citizens. And I know an advanced practice nurse who just went through school, got her degree, she's about our age, and she can't find a job, and she believes it's because of age. So I think we need to take a really serious look at employing people who are seniors as well. So, but those are the kinds of things we're looking at in the Health Committee.
Okay, thank you. You had briefly touched on corrections just as a comment, and I know that Representative Foote has had some criminal justice bills. There have not been as many, in a way, this year, this session, as there had been previously, but there's always critical bills coming up. And maybe you could address some of the bills that have come forward or that you have introduced yourself. And in about 3 or 4 minutes, 4 minutes. Yeah.
Sure, I'd be happy to. I've run actually 4 bills, criminal justice bills. This is an area that I've been focusing on since I've been at the State House for the last couple of years, and I think they're good bills. There's 2 that have passed so far, and actually 3 that have passed so far, and then 1 that's in the process right now. I'll go over that briefly, but. One of the bills that I ran deals with human trafficking, and human trafficking is such a big problem. It's a problem that some folks don't really know is out there, but in fact is very much out there. And there's been a lot of discussion over the last couple of years at the Capitol about this issue, and we've been working on the issue to try to address it. One of the bills that we've used to try to address this issue is a bill that passed, which helps the victims of human trafficking. often victims of human trafficking are required to go out and engage in prostitution. That's part of the whole human trafficking ring. And they will be arrested. They'll be charged with prostitution. They're the ones that end up getting the criminal record, not the one that forced them to do what they're doing. And so what this bill does is it creates an affirmative defense if that victim goes to trial, and it would be basically an affirmative defense of saying, hey, I'm actually a victim of human trafficking, and put that into the court system and see what the courts or the juries can do with that. Or hopefully, before they even get there, the prosecutor can actually take a look at that information and decide to dismiss the case. If that's appropriate. So that's one thing that we will be putting in the law, assuming that the governor signs it. And I think it's a good step. It's certainly not the last thing that we should do in this area, because it's a very comprehensive area, a very troubling area, and something that we need to really be focusing on over the next several years. Another couple of bills that actually they deal with the same area, but I think will be helpful to victims of crime, revolve around those that are victims of assault, and during the course of the assault they were exposed to the assaulter's bodily fluids like blood. We all know that there can be communicable diseases that can pass through those bodily fluids, and one of the things you hear about typically from victims of assault is a concern about whether or not they were exposed to those types of diseases. These bills that have passed and hopefully will be signed by the governor put a system in place to get the defendants tested for those communicable diseases and the victims to be notified if they were exposed to those. And I think that's something that will help put their minds at ease, particularly if it comes back negative, but also to help them take further steps if necessary if it turns out that the test comes back positive. I think that's another good thing that can help victims. A third bill that I've just recently introduced, and it's going to have its first hearing in just a couple of days, revolves around the butane extraction method for hash oil. And this is, I guess, my first foray into the marijuana area, and it's been quite an education over the last couple of years for all of us, particularly for me to look into this. But we have a problem around the state, which is really stated simply as houses are exploding. And that's because there's people out there that are making hash oil through a butane extraction process that is inherently dangerous. And it causes houses to blow up if it's done incorrectly. And it's not just Colorado, it's Washington that's experiencing. They actually have a bill in this area too. So what this bill would do is prohibit that in an unregulated forum. So to make sure that the people that are most likely to blow things up and put other people in danger will not be allowed to do that, and law enforcement can stop it before it happens, hopefully. So those are three areas that I've been focusing on this year. There's lots more to go, but it's something that needs to be done, particularly to help folks here in Colorado, victims of crimes as well.
Since we've touched on marijuana, and several of you have talked about it, and some of the various ramifications that have occurred from the perspective of children, handling products from it, and also how it's affecting the budget. Maybe we could have a short discussion with several of you on what you see are various impacts of the marijuana law. And I'll start with Representative Singer regarding a packaging bill that you had on marijuana, and then go to the Senate about some of the budget implications that are going on with that and what's happened there. So Representative Singer, how about 2 minutes to handle some of your broad issues?
That should be enough. No, well, first of all, I know Representative Foote described his first foray into marijuana being this butane hash oil extraction. Most people describe their college or high school experiences as their first foray into marijuana. And the reason I bring that up is actually, you know, we've with the statistics that we've gathered, a lot of people were concerned that with the legalization of marijuana, more kids were going to be getting their hands on it. Teen use was going to go up. And what we've actually seen is actually a flat line. It really hasn't changed significantly one way or the other. And so I always begin all my conversations now by saying it's time we start treating marijuana like the drug it is and not the drug that some fear it to be. That being said, it's a new commercial product now, and so we have to do things to make sure that it's effectively regulated. One of those things that we're working on right now is making sure that if you have edible marijuana that looks like a cookie or a candy, not only does it have to leave the store in a child-proof, resealable, opaque container, it also should be recognizable outside the package as a marijuana product. If Oreo cookies can easily show that they're an Oreo cookie, not just any kind of cookie, we should be able to do the same thing for marijuana. So that's going to be one of the things. The other bill that just passed out of the Health Committee right now is just presenting people with fact-based information, especially pregnant and breastfeeding moms. One of the illnesses that medical marijuana can cover is nausea. And so a lot of people think that this is a good resource for that, but really they should be talking to their doctors. And so we passed a bill that said that if a dispensary is going to be selling marijuana, it should have just a quick one-page warning with fact-based information for pregnant and breastfeeding moms. So I hope that we can use more of these facts moving forward, but the elephant in the room is still going to be whether or not we can keep those tax dollars to actually make this work.
Okay. And then back to the Senate, and I'm going to start with Senator Jones on what have been some of the, you briefly touched on it in some of your remarks on the budget, what have been some of those implications of the marijuana tax dollars, since it's taxed at an extremely high rate, and we've collected a lot of money on it. So how about 2.5 minutes to discuss that, and I'll have Senator Heath, if you want to pitch in on that also.
So it's been interesting. The voters said we want to go down this path and gave us a constitutional framework to do that in. And part of that has to do with us refunding money, or part of the money we collect back to local governments that have recreational marijuana being sold. So we've gone ahead and done that. And then we have this Tabor problem where we have to go to the ballot. So we're taking money out of the general fund right now, the fund that goes to education and other things like that, to remit money to the local governments, not knowing if we are going to be able to keep it, and in the long term have to keep remitting the local government money out of the general fund and not out of marijuana taxes. So that's the kind of thing that's going on, and so that, Senator Stedman is working on a referred measure for people to vote on a third time. Did you really mean us to keep the money? And they'll say yes, probably. They have overwhelmingly before. And if we don't do that, we will continue to have to regulate marijuana out of the general fund, competing with education dollars and healthcare dollars and that kind of thing. I think the voters will have the sense to say, yeah, why didn't you hear us the first time? This is the kind of crazy stuff that Tabor makes you do. It was written by a guy who's since become a 3-time felon, and it has a lot of issues that I think we need to correct, and that will be phase one. That'll be the 2015 ballot. In 2016, we understand people are coming with another proposal on the big Tabor issue to say you can keep, probably will say you can keep the money you collect. It's not collecting more money, but you can keep the money you collect. And the reason that's important is that we will never, ever, ever dig our way out of the cuts we made in the last recession and the previous recession to education and other programs that help people. We have a $1 billion deficit. We'll never undo that at the rate we're going now. And so people in the state have a big choice to make. They really do. Do they want to provide for our future, or do they want a small refund, which is, I think this time, is $18 or something like that.
And Senator Heath, did you want to add anything to that?
Well, it might be a good opportunity, Jeanette, if we want to just take it into the broader subject,
Yes.
because we are in a position, and the whole country's in a position where we've obviously come out of this recession much better, and when you look at Europe and the rest of the world, we have done phenomenally well. And most of the states are using this money to reinvest, particularly in infrastructure and education, and where we desperately need it as well. You can pick a number, but we're underfunding just basic maintenance by $400 million a year in roads and bridges. And on a bigger, grander scope, we have $4 billion worth of needs, to include the I-70 corridor going, right out of the mousetrap, and which is, if we fund this, is going to take probably 3/4 of our budget if you're looking at it. And we're doing everything through public-private partnerships. My friend over here has talked a lot about that, but we're being forced into it because we have no other opportunities. We heard an interesting, and you and I had this conversation the other day about your idea about bringing money back in. Well, if we bring $150 million back in, we're going to have to refund it. We're going to refund $417 million, but the projected estimate in 2 years. Casey Becker, Representative Becker, has got a bill that wants to look at all of the exemptions, of which we've got somewhere in the neighborhood of $2 billion sitting out there. The truth of the matter is, if we don't do anything with Tabor and we repeal those exemptions, we're just going to be refunding the money. So, I mean, we're in a position where we're damned if we do, damned if we don't. We have some things that we really should be doing just from good government purposes, but no other state in the country has these, so it just puts us in more of a refund mechanism. We talk about severance tax. One of the things that we got into in this discussion on the budget last week was one of the suggestions, and I strongly feel we ought to take severance tax and take it out of the revenue and make it Tabor exempt. But we're going to have to do all of these issues that we do that. Every time we look at them, we're going to have to look at, do we put this, does this become part of the Tabor revenue base? So that's really the bigger issue. Marijuana is one of those, but we really need, Representative Foot's idea. We bring $150 million. If we could keep it from going into the Tabor revenue base, fine. But chances are that isn't going to be able to happen. So that's the bigger problem.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of little strings, and that if you pull one string, it's going to unravel in one area or whatever. I wanted to just briefly ask Representative Hullinghorst to just quickly address, it was a question from the audience, about we have a couple of minimum wage bills that are going on in the legislature, and where are they right now? I know we had a pay equity, which created a lot of furor in the newspapers earlier in the session, but what's the status of some of those minimum wage bills, since we've talked about jobs and employment in middle class, et cetera? Maybe 2 to 3 minutes on that, please.
Well, I think minimum wage is one of the more important elements of helping the middle class and helping those people who are working hard to get into the middle class, get there. I know that it is now very strongly supported by people in the state of Colorado. By a very large margin, they believe we should be increasing the minimum wage. The minimum wage now, at a little over $8 an hour, provides nobody in the state of Colorado who works full-time and works hard with a livable income. We have to provide government services to those folks if they can get them. It costs all of the taxpayers' money for people to have to work at that low wages. We have 2 bills. One that is still alive, that passed the House and will be going to the Senate. There's obviously a lot of disagreement between Democrats and Republicans to a large extent on whether these bills are effective or not, and I don't expect that bill to pass in the Senate, but what that bill will do is it would give local control to municipalities and counties to raise the minimum wage if they believe that in their jurisdiction that would be helpful, and it would bring people, give them the kind of opportunity that they need to succeed and to work hard and to reach the American dream. That's a very good bill, and I hope that it gets a good discussion in the Senate. The other bill was actually a House concurrent resolution to put on the ballot a constitutional amendment. Our minimum wage is now triggered by a constitutional amendment that was passed a few years ago, and it has a ratchet up, and so our minimum wage increases a little bit, but certainly not enough to keep up with a livable wage. So it would change that constitutional amendment and actually by 2020 raise the minimum wage gradually to a total of $12.50 an hour, which some people don't believe is even adequate. But that was the proposal. In order to pass a concurrent resolution, you have to have, and put something on the ballot, you have to have a 2/3 vote from both bodies. And we did not get a 2/3 vote out of the House of Representatives. All of the Democrats voted for it. And so that's not enough. That's 34 votes. So that is dead for this year, but there may be an initiative to that effect. And just like the Tabor issue that we deal with, I think it's unfortunate that we have to take those kinds of things to a constitutional amendment to make them work, but that's what we see. So we have one bill left that may get, I hope, some good discussion in the Senate.
Okay, yes, and Senator Heath. Yes.
Jenna, thank you. I just might want to comment. We all do town halls, and obviously I look out here, and I know a number of you come to them. But this has been the subject of a number of people in town halls that I've been involved with, and that is give local jurisdiction. I think it's a strongly supported in Boulder, and hopefully we'll get a good hearing. I intend to be one of the sponsors of that bill, but I'm afraid it's going to be an 18-17 vote, 17-18, I should say. But I think this is one we need to continue to push.
Okay, thank you. We've only briefly talked about any environmental issues. There's been several bills to have the state take over BLM or federal lands, which is always an interesting challenge. We've got a variety of water bills that are out there. We have a new fee structure bill that's been introduced with Representative Becker, who's not here. Maybe just do an overall kind of purview from your point of view on what have been some of the environmental bills that you feel might affect the state, have gone anywhere, might have a future. I know there's historic land use of water use and groundwater bills and that type of thing. Why don't I start in the Senate, and Senator Jones, do you want to address some of those bills in 3 minutes?
Sure. Thanks for letting me talk about that. This week, we have one of the bills that says the state will concurrently run federal lands, Forest Service lands, BLM lands with the federal government. I think it's a really bad idea. It's a lot of access to regular people to go out and picnic and hike and hunt and fish. That the land may be sold and you won't be able to do that. Nobody's figured out how we're going to work that out. I think this is more people saying that I don't know what it is. It's a kind of a extreme agenda, I think, pushing this, and a lot of people who enjoy the outdoors, particularly fishers and hunters, are coming out against that bill. The other thing that's going on that a lot of people don't know about is we're doing a state water plan, and we did hearings across Colorado last year, and we're going to do that this summer on the Water Matters Committee. And what's interesting about that is we're supposed to double our growth almost by 2050. And there's no more water, basically, and in fact, there's probably less. It's interesting, the water establishment is very conservative, but they have bought totally into climate change. They've done a report that's being embraced that shows that we've warmed 2 degrees over the last 30 years, and it's going to be 2 to 6 degrees more over the next 50 or so years. Our water is running, and we're seeing it right now, 3 weeks earlier in the stream. You want to worry about storage capacity and reservoirs. That big reservoir up there is now leaking, basically. And on top of that, we're going to have all this additional population. So this is going to be the first state water plan. Other states have done it, and it's very important because the other states along the Colorado River, particularly, where we get a lot of our water, every major city in Boulder County gets water from the Colorado River on the western slope. We're going I'm sorry, I double clutched there, but in any case, it is a big problem because if we don't get our act together, California, which is in a historic drought, and Arizona and Nevada, which has grown rapidly, are going to want that water. And so we've got to be a lot smarter about our land use, about our conservation, and about climate change in general, our part in that, to make the thing work. So that's another big issue, the state water plan. And a lot of people didn't think we'd get there. And I applaud Governor Hickenlooper for trying, and I think we will. It won't be a hardcore plan, but it'll be a real good start on the guidelines and guidance on how to move forward. But the biggest thing I think that's going to be hard about it is when we develop more, if we develop with great big lawns, we're going to have a big problem, and there's a big disconnect between the water providers and the developers, and we're going to have to figure that one out.
Yeah, I know the Senate, well, it just passed both houses, is Senate Bill 8, which was Senator Roberts from the Durango area, on land use and water conservation. Also that the Colorado Water Plan, which is through the Colorado Water Conservation Board, it's to be finalized by the end of this year, December 2015. But I know that it will have oversight, and I'm glad that the Interim Water Committee will be, again, addressing it, and there has been a lot of public hearings on that. Is there someone on the House side who would like to comment on the environmental bills? And Representative Foote, I want about 3 minutes on some of, because there's a lot that have come in the House.
Thank you. Yes, I would like to talk a little bit about that, and if I have any time at the end, I'll talk about some things that haven't happened that should have. But I just want to highlight one bill that I'm running here in this area about climate change, and it's something that I think could make a difference. Of course, this is a huge issue, climate change, but something we can do on the state level to at least start changing the conversation. Right now, when there's major energy bills, like renewable energy bills, well, actually, this happens for every bill, but one of our offices at the legislature has to come up with what they call a fiscal note, and that's a statement that talks about the cost to the state government should this bill pass, or savings to the state government should the bill pass, whatever the case may be. And when we run bills, like a couple years ago, Senate Bill 252, which increased renewable energy standard for rural electrics, there was a fiscal note attached to that talking about the cost to the state government if that bill were to pass. And that was part of the conversation. A big part of that conversation was also what would be the cost to the ratepayers. And some folks argued that the ratepayers would have to pay more, and that was a big part of the conversation. But what was never part of the conversation is how much is it going to cost the state if something like this doesn't pass? How much is it going to cost the state if we continue to burn carbon and if we continue to increase the effects of climate change? How much is it going to cost the state, for example, if our water dwindles, if our crops can't be grown the same as they have been before, if our tourism industry falls off because we aren't getting the snow, if we continue to suffer from drought in the southeast part of the state like we have been? So the bill that I'm running will be hopefully talking about that and putting that into fiscal notes about the social cost of carbon. If we continue to burn carbon, this is how much it's going to cost the state. And so keep an eye out for that. That'll be an interesting discussion, I think. Now, segueing into what we haven't done so far, which we should be, it relates to oil and gas. You all probably know that there was the governor's task force with dealing with oil and gas issues convened starting late last year, and it finished the end of February this year. It came out with, I think, 9 recommendations that had to pass by a 2/3 majority, and those 9 recommendations don't go nearly far enough for what we're hearing from Boulder County and other parts of the state. And it's a shame because it was a good opportunity to really make some progress in the local control area in particular, and it really didn't, unfortunately. So we'll have to continue to have those discussions. And one thing that strikes me of many that we need to do is we need to talk about the state government and how it actually balances or doesn't balance oil and gas development. And there's a lot more to go there, and we just haven't been able to get there in the legislature so far, but I hope that we can sometime in the future.
Okay. I'm going to sort of come to some wrap-up and give each of you 2.5 minutes to sort of see where you see the end of the next 30 days going before the end of the session, and what any particular bills you feel need to be stressed within the next 30 days, given the week that the House will be battling out the budget. And I'm going to start with Representative Diane Primavera.
Thank you. Well, speaking personally, I have an important bill that I'm hoping will pass all the way through both chambers, and it's to create a strategic plan to address the aging population in the state of Colorado. We're seeing an unprecedented demographic shift over the next 20 years of more and more people becoming senior citizens. They call it the senior tsunami. And it's sort of the perfect storm that the state is looking at. At the same time that senior citizens begin to purchase fewer goods and start needing more services, there will be an impact on our sales tax. People are not at the highest part of their earning years when they become 65, so we'll see a hit on income tax. And because we have the homestead tax exemption in Colorado, we're liable to also see a hit on property tax. So at the same time this population needs more services, our tax revenues will be going down dramatically. And so this bill would create a 20-some member planning group that covers all spectrums from transportation to healthcare to housing to whatever, to address what this impact of this population is going to have on the state of Colorado. A lot of us have bills that have been waiting in Appropriations Committee, so we've been trying to take a good look at the long bill and make sure that we have a balanced budget that passes, and then whatever discretionary money we have left, try and prioritize the bills that are remaining that have fiscal notes on them. And I have a couple of those. So, but you know, I always describe the legislative session as being on a roller coaster. And the first 60 or so days, you're kind of chugging up the roller coaster, and then at the very end, it's like you're trying to get all the bills through and the budget passed and the School Finance Act and everything. And to have 30 days left to do that, we've still got a lot of work to do, but I think we've done really good work so far.
Yeah, because the School Finance Act won't get acted on until the long bill gets passed, so that's still coming down the pike for the big rush of the downhill on the roller coaster. Senator Jones, your perspective on what needs to get done in the next 30 days, or any other bills that you see are there, or what needs to be done?
Well, I think in part it's what is not going to get done as well in that. And I agree with Representative Foote. The Oil and Gas Task Force was a big nothing burger. It's really disappointing. There are a few positions in the budget. I tried to get 10 more oil and gas inspectors. They're only adding 3 based on a task force recommendation. There are 55 lobbyists. There are only 30 inspectors in Colorado if those 3 passes. And that's a real problem for us in East Boulder County particularly. We need people to be able to inspect quickly. But beyond that, it didn't make a lot of the grade. It didn't get to the nut of the problem about local control. It just kind of moved by it. And that's disappointing. But I also like to think the other side of the equation, and that is the clean energy jobs and working on those issues, renewable energy, energy conservation. Those are places where we can create jobs. And there's a thing called the Office of Consumer Counsel, which is a watchdog group over Excel. And right now they have to be reauthorized this year or they go away. They've saved taxpayers $1.7 billion since 1984. So not only do they stick up for the regular people, but they also do for small businesses and ag. And they keep the lower rates lower, but they've also helped us push a cleaner energy economy. And that's the exact kind of thing we need to do. And it's disappeared into the woodwork. We had a hearing early on. Republican leadership has not brought it up. We're pushing hard to try to get that out of there. But in the end, I think Eastern Boulder County benefits from good paying jobs with benefits. And I think a lot of that is through high tech and clean tech, what we call clean tech, which is the renewable energy. And so I'm going to continue pushing those issues as well, because I really think that that's the place we ought to be, especially with the climate change we're experiencing. And a lot less on the fuels, on the carbon fuels like gas and oil. And when we do produce those people who live next door to those operations should be protected, bottom line. And we'll continue to work on that. We've heard people loud and clear. It's very real. You go to Erie and talk to people about the drilling rig that had to shut down over there and they can't sell their home, how important that is. So I think we have a lot brighter future with the clean energy and the jobs it brings, and that's what I'm going to continue working on.
Okay, thank you. Senator Heath, any final remarks?
Thanks, Jeanette. Well, we touched on education a little bit. I see my good friend Lori Albright sitting back there, president of the school board. And this whole issue of assessments is going to eat us up the next 30 days. We have probably the broadest scope of opinions on any subject that I've ever seen, certainly in my 7 years down there right now. And it's, the irony is, this is not partisan necessarily, but it's all around the issue of accountability in schools. I think I tried to run Proposition 103 to get funding for schools in 2011. Lori was one of my co-chairs with me on that. And the pushback we got was, we're not going to give any money to schools because they aren't doing well enough until they turn around and produce better outcomes. We're not going to fund it. So you get caught in this chicken and the egg situation. We ran Proposition 66, which had other issues, but also was defeated by the. But it all goes back to this: what does the public out there think schools should be doing, and how do we measure it? And I think everybody in this room, if I asked the question, do you think schools ought to be accountable? I think we'd all get our hands up. Then the question is, accountable for what? And then how do you measure it? We thought we had a compromise that came out of a commission that, like the Oil and Gas Commission, was going on. And coming out of that, they had some recommendations I thought we could come together on. And that blew up a couple of weeks ago. And right now, frankly, we've got, about 6 different bills in the Senate alone with an unbelievable coalition of people sponsoring them. But really no consensus around any of them. And I think this conversation is going to be one of the most difficult we have. I frankly don't know where it's going. I think coming out of it with nothing, with Boulder Valley, 40%, Lori, of kids opted out of their tests. And other St. Vrain, 99+% of the kids took the test. So we've got huge divergence just between our 2 school districts and many, many different opinions. But I think this is where I'm going to be spending a lot of my time in the next 30 days.
Yeah. I think, a lot of the education bills are really going to touch on that. And Representative Hollinghorst, Speaker of the House, could you please do you're going to have a tough job in the next 30 days.
Yes. Well, this is generally panic time when you're a speaker. I know it was when I was majority leader for 2 years before this. And you wonder how in the world we're going to get it done in a month. We have a lot of work to do. But I look back at the records, and that makes me feel better, because we're about the same place here as we have been in the last many years I've been involved in the legislature. We get a lot of work done in the last 4 weeks of the session. It seems to be endemic in the human condition that we hurry up and wait until the very last minute and then we get our work done. And I'm confident that we will do that in the next 4 weeks. But you wonder what the result of that is. I'll tell you one thing for sure. The result is that all of the people that you see sitting around this table are going to be completely exhausted by the time we get through the next 4 weeks. It always happens that way. But I believe that we have an opportunity to get some good work done, and that is with a split chambers. And we will not get as much landmark legislation done as we did in the first year in 2014. But we will, in 2012, wasn't it? 2013. 13. There we go. Yeah. 2013 and 14. We will get some things done for the people of the state of Colorado, and they will be moderate and they will be compromises because that's what we have to do. And I consider it an opportunity. We will get an education bill that deals with testing and assessments, and I'm going to be encouraging to my good colleague who is going to do a tremendous amount of work on this, as he said, over the next 4 weeks, that we now have a compromise in the House. And that compromise is going to be introduced as a bipartisan bill that carries a lot of weight, I hope, in the Senate. And maybe we will get the job done. That's very important. We will get a School Finance Act. It won't fund as much as we possibly can. We will get some really good bills on workforce development, thanks to again, to my colleagues here. And we will provide some help to small business. We will also have some good senior initiatives, as Representative Primavera referred to, with some funding. And The ones that I think will come in to some extent are the environmental issues that we need to deal with, that we haven't been able to, as my other colleagues have mentioned too. We'll get a few things done, hopefully in the next year, and perhaps 2 years, we will get a whole lot more done. We desperately need to in that area.
Okay, so thank you very much. And Representative Foote.
Thank you. And I want to start off just briefly coming back to the bigger picture, which is what we started talking about at the beginning of this, is that we need to be, as legislators, focused on building a strong middle class. And that's what we have to continue to come back to time and time again. And part of that, has already been mentioned, is that everybody should get a fair shot. Everybody should have the opportunity to succeed. We always need to focus on that. And I think the second part of that, making sure that we focus on building a strong middle class, is making sure that everybody pays their fair share as well. And that's where I'm going to bring in the tax havens bill that we've talked about a little bit here. We have a situation now where we all pay our fair share of taxes. We don't typically like it, but we do it because we know that it goes towards the public good. We know it goes towards education. We know it goes towards building our roads and things that we have to do. But unfortunately, there's some taxpayers, in particular large multinational corporations that have accountants and lawyers that can do this, where they are able to put off some of their tax liability by moving some of their money into offshore tax havens. And that's not fair. I mean, just to put it in a simple way, when the rest of us are trying to do that, and these folks are not doing it, and it hurts our state. So what we're trying to do in this bill, this tax havens bill, is to make sure that those corporations that have their money offshore report it as money that's taxable income, just like if it were onshore, and pay their taxes like everybody else. And that's a tax fairness issue. That's one of the issues that I care about. Another issue that I care very much about is education funding. And the point of this would be, if they're able to pay their taxes like everybody else does, then the money should go towards education, should go towards drawing down the negative factor, trying to dig us out of the hole that we were unfortunately had to dig as a result of the Great Recession, and put money towards helping invest in our kids and our community for the long run. And there's a couple of conditions to it. One of them is that we have to run a ballot measure if it were to pass because of Tabor, and Senator Heath talked about that. So if you happen to see that on your ballot this fall, at least you'll know where the genesis of it was, and I hope you'll, of course, consider supporting it. But that's just one element of what we can do to make sure that we keep our focus on the middle class, making sure that everybody gets a fair shot, making sure that everyone pays their fair share, and we should always be thinking about that.
Okay, thank you. And Representative Singer.
Well,
Thank you.
thank you again to everyone here today. Happy Easter, happy Passover, and thanks to the viewing audience as well. I just want to wrap up by saying that it's amazing to work with this group of people, because we really have uniquely actually the same values, and we really want to see things work for the entire state in largely the same way. And it reminds me of a statement actually made by a Republican colleague of mine a couple years ago when we were voting on creating a child abuse statewide reporting hotline, which goes live April 7th. He knew it was going to cost money, and he said, this is too important to get wrong. I know my voters are conservative. They don't want to spend money, but this is too important. Well, there's lots of things that are too important to get wrong, and you heard about a couple of them. A couple of the ones I'll be working on is making sure that police officers with PTSD have the ability to apply for workers' compensation. You know, we know the echoes of the horror that a lot of those cops have witnessed are sometimes too intense, and unfortunately too many of them are killing themselves. We know that drug abuse in prescription drugs is still rampant, and so we're working on a bill to allow new technologies that would make sure that these drugs can't be crushed and snorted or melted and injected. And on the issue of affordable housing, I'll be introducing a bill that puts basically a $1 fee on the sale of every home, or excuse me, a $10 fee on the sale of every home, to make sure that we actually have a trust fund available so people can actually afford to live in great communities like Boulder in the first place. All of these things are too important to get wrong. And if there's one other takeaway that you have, we know that a lot of people have been left behind by this so-called recovery, and we haven't forgotten. And we know that whether it's on mental health or on drug abuse or on education or on job training, all of those things are too important to get wrong. And as leaders, we also have to listen. And I think that's where you really come in with your research and your data and the care that you show about the community here. And so we are going to continue to listen, and we're going to continue to work on these things that are too important to get wrong. And I look forward to seeing some good things happen in the next 30 days.
Thank you. I want to thank the legislators for coming. I want to thank the League of Women Voters for organizing this and the wonderful audience that we have out there. Sorry I couldn't get to all of your questions. As you can tell, there is a lot going on down there. The League of Women Voters has a website, LWVBC, and we also have Facebook, so you can follow us on Facebook. We cover a lot of issues, and it's really exciting. You can find a niche in whatever your particular area of interest is. And I want to thank the Boulder Valley School District for letting us use the room and the facilities. Thank you very much. Have a good day.